Back in February 2023, I put up my full playthrough of Exa-Skeleton for the original Xbox on YouTube. At the time, it was the first of its kind. No one else had really bothered to document the entire thing, at least not in North America. I won't lie, I felt a little proud of that, a rare YouTube first, but let's be real, playthrough videos aren't as big as they used to be. So I uploaded it, went on with my life, and kept pushing through the never-ending grind of making content. Still, despite barely anyone watching those videos, a few people actually showed some interest in hearing me talk about this Japanese-only Xbox exclusive, and honestly, that's not too surprising. The original Xbox had some great Japanese-developed games, but in Japan itself, the system didn't exactly take off. It was pretty much the Dreamcast situation in reverse. Just like North America shrugged off Sega's final console, Japan did the same with Microsoft's big black box. That's not to say Japanese developers weren't interested. Some of my favorite Xbox games came from that side of the industry, but the general public just wasn't feeling it. Even so, Microsoft did manage to secure a handful of Japanese exclusives. They were trying, really trying, to win over the country that pretty much is the heart of video game development. Looking back, it was one of their more genuine efforts to make the Xbox stand out worldwide. They made deals, let developers get away with some of the weirdest concepts, and even tried to position the system as a sort of Dreamcast 2.0. That isn't just fan speculation either. Microsoft actually worked with people behind the Dreamcast and even looked into making the Xbox backwards compatible with it. That never panned out, but it does explain why the system had so many Sega titles and collections. Can you imagine how much a game changer that would have been? Anyway, getting back to Exa-Skeleton. This was a mech game developed by Kei-Nova Limited, who might have been a subdivision of Hakuhodo Incorporated and Production IG, a name most people recognize from anime, not games. And while I'd love to sit here and say I have no idea why this never made it to North America, I kinda do know why. See, while the PlayStation 2 had its fair share of text-heavy, near-visual novel-style games, the Xbox really didn't. Not in the US anyway. Exa-Skeleton has missions and some light customization, but at its core, it's basically a visual novel. Now sure, the PS2 had plenty of games with similar elements, but those usually had a lot of gameplay to back them up. And I'm sure there were exceptions, but for the most part, the Xbox was known for action games. Microsoft leaned hard into that reputation, and their marketing didn't do them any favors in shaking it off. We're talking about the era of Mountain Dew and Doritos cross-promotions, Halo 2 slushy cups at convenience stores, you get the idea. People weren't looking for slower, text-heavy experiences on the Xbox. Personally, even if Exa-Skeleton had made it over, I don't think it would have done well. If you strip out the story and just focus on the gameplay, you're looking at maybe 2.5 hours. With the cutscenes, it's about 5. Even back in 2003, that wasn't an easy sell for a game that would have likely retailed for $40 to $60. But for those of us who like digging into the more obscure corners of gaming history, it's still a pretty cool curiosity. That is, even if it never got a translation at all. Yes, I played Exa-Skeleton in its entirety without knowing what anybody was saying. Compared to 2023, there are way more ways to get a rough idea of what's being said in a game like this. That said, no translation program is ever going to match actually knowing Japanese. I'd love to learn it, but I just don't have the time to take on a whole new language. So here's what I do know about Exa-Skeleton. I got all of this by manually adding subtitles, saving them as a document, and running them through Google Translate. Yeah, it's not the most sophisticated method, but it's what I had to do to get a sense of the story, especially since there's so little info on this game online. As far as I can tell, there isn't even really a summary of it anywhere, not even with me trying to do a few Japanese searches. So Exa-Skeleton takes place in a world where professional mech combat, called IG-1, is one of the most brutal and prestigious sports out there. But it's more than just a competition, it's an industry. Pilots fight in high-speed battles using Exas, heavily armed mechanical frames built for war. Teams are backed by corporations, private investors, or even criminal groups, all trying to dominate the league. IG-1 isn't just about being the best, it's about staying in the game long enough to matter. The story follows Joe Graham, a rookie pilot trying to make a name for himself. He joins Team Rex, a newer team with big ambitions, but not a lot of resources. His teammates include Arthur D. Cunningham, the level-headed one, and Getz von Gunther, a highly skilled but hot-tempered pilot. Joe quickly learns that IG-1 is anything but fair. Just getting onto a team is one thing, staying on it is a whole different battle. Teams constantly shuffle their rosters, cutting pilots who don't perform and making moves based on politics just as much as skill. Some fights aren't won in the cockpit, they're won in backroom deals, corporate meetings, or under-the-table negotiations. Early on, Joe meets Claire Hewitt, a standout pilot from Looter Wolf, one of the top teams in the league. She's proven herself in battle, but that's not enough. She constantly faces scrutiny, not because of her skills, but because she's one of the few female pilots in IG-1. A lot of people see her as a novelty or a PR stunt, making her climb even harder. And then there's the underground side of IG-1. Outside of the official league, there are unsanctioned fights, battles with no rules, no regulations, and no safety measures. Pilots call it Yura IG. Some use it to make a name for themselves before breaking into the real league. Others fight there because they have to, because they've been discarded by the system and have nowhere else to go. As Joe's career moves forward, tensions build, not just between rival teams, but within Team Rex. Not everyone is happy about how things are run, and some pilots are forced into choices that could make or break their futures. The deeper Joe gets into IG-1, the clearer it becomes this isn't just a sport. It's a machine designed to chew pilots up and spit them out the moment they stop being useful. I really hope that all sounds interesting, because the actual mech piloting, yeah, not so much. Like most visual novels, gameplay is an afterthought, if it's even there at all. If Exa-Skeleton had been released outside Japan, it would have been lumped in with games like Mech Assault or Steel Battalion just because they all have mechs. But this game doesn't even come close to those. Honestly, if it wasn't such a curiosity, I wouldn't have put in the effort to even play through it, unless I just needed a short video to fill space between bigger projects. That said, before I get into why there's not much to write home about, let me at least give credit where it's due. First off, the gameplay is there to visually express the action scenes. It wouldn't have been great if everything was just shown through dialogue. Plenty of games do that, but at least Exaframe made an effort to include some hands-on segments. Second, and this might be a stretch, but there's no fluff. You get the important missions and key moments without having to wade through filler or questionable side content. And lastly, there is some customization. Basic weight classes, different weapons that actually feel distinct, and the option to dual wield. Some of the maps are even surprisingly well designed, though a lot of them are just small arenas where you fight mechs head on. The ones that aren't like that, they're actually pretty solid and can even be a bit challenging. So what is the downside? Well, it's just basic. Every encounter boils down to going head to head with an enemy and outgunning them. You move forward, make sure you've got enough ammo, or pick some up from a downed mech, and repeat. There's no depth, no hidden collectibles, no branching choices, nothing that changes how the game plays out. It doesn't even have the dating sim elements a lot of visual novels lean on. It's completely linear with zero replayability once you hit the credits. It's basically like playing through an anime, which does have some value. Just not enough to make it worth importing and going through the hassle of translating. I see a lot of comments about generic anime storylines on my videos, and this one checks all the expected boxes. It's not bad, but it's not unique or groundbreaking either, which probably explains why there's never been a fan translation. Then again, if enough people took interest, I don't think it would be too hard to pull off in the future. Visually, there's only so much to say since most of the game consists of static character portraits and background images. That said, the character designs are memorable. Even after playing this nearly 2 years ago, I had no trouble recognizing them. For an Xbox title though, the level of detail is impressive. A lot of thought went into how the mechs look and move. Arm tracking when locking onto targets is surprisingly smooth. And I won't lie, there's almost something about the way the combat flows that almost makes it feel like Max Payne with mechs, just without the bullet time. But on the flip side, the in-game cutscenes are rough. They're stiff, awkward, and pretty hard to sit through. Environments, as expected, are functional but uninspired. Destroyed cityscapes, mountain trails, military bases. Nothing bad from a technical standpoint, but nothing particularly interesting either. As for the music, it's unremarkable. It does its job as background noise while characters talk, but that's about it. The one exception is the ending theme, which nails that 80s OVA vibe that I love. I just wish the rest of the soundtrack had that same energy. All in all, I don't see why anybody would play Exa-Skeleton without knowing Japanese. It doesn't really offer anything that stands out beyond its status as an obscure, Japanese exclusive Xbox title. If that alone interests you, then sure, it's not a long game if you know the language. you're just here for the mech gameplay and skip the story, you'll probably finish it in less time than it takes to watch a decently long movie. That might make for an interesting afternoon, but not necessarily a fulfilling one. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, drop a like and leave a comment below. And if you're not subscribed yet, I'd like to have you on board. I'm Kei-Nova, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.